I got engaged to a blind Duke. Episode 189. Henders called the youngest at the very end. Hey, youngest. Yes. Garnet, who had been standing at attention, raised her hand high. Henders hurriedly averted his gaze at Garnet's response. Not you, the other youngest. Come forward. Though the Count's daughter was claiming to be the youngest of the Knight Order, she was still an uncomfortable youngest. Why? Eubies approached with an annoyed expression. At this, Garnet glared at Eubies with a jealous look. Have you ever faced a demon beast? Yes. Henders frowned as if surprised. When? Where? Last year on the way to the capital, I encountered a tunnel monster. Ah, right. You came back injured from that, didn't you? When Eubies pouted and avoided answering, Henders chuckled. When I get older like my senior, I'll win too. Well, look at this. Go drink more milk and come back, kid. Henders grabbed Eubies' neck and wrestled with him. It was quite cute how the kid who only came up to his waist was getting cocky now that he'd grown a bit. Stop it. You smell. Hey, I bathed a week ago, you know? Ugh. Garnet, who had been listening to their conversation, also dry-heaved inwardly. Ugh, my foot. Go. Eubies. Where? A sparring match with the demon beast. Win this time, kid. Wow, this senior has gone crazy. Eubies looked at Henders as if he were absurd. Why? It's the lady's beloved pet demon beast. Pet rabbit. Garnet corrected him, but her voice was drowned out by the boisterous laughter of the knights. Ha ha ha. Hey, does it make sense to put the word pet in front of demon beast? Are you going to tell Our Lady exactly what you just said? When Eubies snorted and turned to move, Henders firmly grabbed the back of his neck. There wasn't a knight who didn't know that Eubies and Marin got along well. Hey. Are you really going to tell her? She already heard? At the clear voice that suddenly came from behind, the knights froze stiff for a moment. When they slowly turned their creaking heads, Marin was waving her hand in greeting with a bright smile. Lady. Senior. Marin exchanged eye greetings with Eubies and Garnet and approached Henders. When the completely frozen Henders met her eyes, he quickly bowed his head. Good day, lady. It looks like everyone couldn't sleep well? We had to finish up. Henders was about to say it was because of the demon beast but hurriedly changed his words. What finishing up? Well, we had to finish cleaning up the training ground. Right? When Henders looked to the side with eyes pleading for help, his colleagues played dumb. Are you all gathered here like this because of the giant rabbit? Marin asked, seeing as many as 10 knights standing in a row near the wooden house. Yes. When Henders readily agreed, Marin smiled awkwardly. No matter how much Bunny didn't harm people, it was a size that ordinary people couldn't help but be startled by. That's why even within the Duke's castle, she had chosen lodging next to the Knight Order, which was less frequented and seemed to suit Bunny well. But the knights were suffering because of Bunny. How ridiculous. Gerald, who had approached at some point, swept his disapproving gaze over the knights. At Gerald's appearance, the knights immediately straightened up. To think my Knight Order is this weak. At his cold words, the knights collectively became dejected. Marin clicked her tongue inwardly at the sight. Why crush people's spirits? Among the gloomy-faced knights, she called Eubies, who alone seemed unbothered. Eubies. Yes. Far from being dejected, Eubies was confident by himself. Would you like to try sparring with the rabbit? Really? Eubies asked with sparkling eyes. At her words, the knights held their breath. What they said earlier was just a joke. Eubies, who was still an apprentice knight, couldn't be a match for Bunny. Henders, who had mentioned sparring just moments ago to tease Eubies, quietly raised his hand. Lady. Eubies is not yet a match for the demon the Rabbit. I know. That's why it's sparring. They shouldn't hurt each other. Soon Yubis stepped forward with an excited face, holding a wooden sword. Bunny, who had been rolling around on the floor, looked up at Yubis with an arrogant expression. Yubis also glared at Bunny as if he wouldn't lose. Marin approached the lying Bunny and introduced Yubis. Rabbit, this is Yubis. He's a child I cherish. Being treated like a child when he was all grown up. Yubis glanced at Marin with an expression that didn't know whether to be angry or happy. Still, Lady Marin said she cherished him. Yubis wants to spar with you. Sparring means your teeth come out long. Bunny, who had gotten up from his spot, extended his teeth long as if understanding her words. The knights watching from behind swallowed hard. In the desert, whenever Bunny made his teeth long, the surroundings were always drenched in blood. But you have to stop when I tell you to stop. The rabbit tapped the floor with his foot and snorted at Yubis. It was a look that seemed to say come in. The moment Yubis swung his wooden sword from top to bottom, Bunny quickly went behind Yubis and kicked his back. Ugh. Again. Yubis, who had tumbled forward from Bunny's kick, sprang up and stood straight. Even after that, Yubis couldn't keep up with Bunny's fast speed and kept getting beaten. Wow, that actually works. A competitive spirit boiled up in the hearts of the knights watching the sparring. To think they could have a serious sparring match with a demon beast without shedding blood. The demon beast Bunny was a top predator among desert demon beasts. It took 3 knights using aura to handle one Bunny. And they could fight such a demon beast one-on-one without getting hurt? Rabbit. Stop. At Marin's words, Bunny, who had been standing triumphantly on Yubis' back, stepped back. Yubis, are you okay? Garnet, worried, hurriedly ran to Yubis. I'm fine. Yubis groaned as he got up, brushed the grass off his body, and smiled refreshingly at Marin. That was amazing. Let's do it again. Hey, youngest. A knight as big as a bear called out to the youngest. Yes. Garnet, who was next to Yubis, answered first. Ahem. Not you, Yubis. Even cold water has its order. What? Yubis frowned as if asking what he was talking about. Miss, next time, could I please? The big knight chuckled and asked Marin. Behind him, the other knights quickly lined up in a row. The fear of living with demon beasts had disappeared, replaced by competitive spirit. Gerald's eyes lit up at the knights' change. The knights were the ones who clashed with Bunny the most in the desert. So he understood their fear. But Marin had turned that fear into fighting spirit. Gerald looked fondly at Marin, who was organizing the knights' turns. Whose fiancé is so wise? Cute. Lovely. Gerald was only frustrated by the limits of his own expression. No matter what praise he gave her, it wasn't enough. Oliver stood before Gerald with a tense expression. So the Emperor's approval still hasn't arrived? Yes. Oliver bowed his head with a shameful expression. Gerald looked out the window with an indifferent face. He had shown the Emperor his strength and warned him not to do anything foolish. Yet he was still acting this way. I really shouldn't have gotten involved with the Crown Prince. Oliver silently agreed with Gerald's quiet words. The only reason the Emperor could ignore the Duke's words was, in his opinion, Miss Diana's engagement to the Crown Prince. How is Dia these days? She frequently exchanges letters with His Highness the Crown Prince. Gerald clenched his fist to calm his anger toward the Emperor. He wanted to go to the capital right now and overturn everything. However, if Dia was sincere about the Crown Prince, he couldn't prevent the girl who had lost her parents from marrying the one she loved. If it were his old self, he would have ignored everything and unleashed his anger at the Emperor, but now he knew how precious a loved one was. Send another letter to the Emperor. He can't ignore my letters forever. Yes. And Gerald, who had been silent for a moment, made up his mind and spoke. Contact those we have planted in the Imperial Palace. He didn't want to use this card. He had temporarily buried the Emperor's affairs by eliminating the Eastern Archduke, but if he continued to act this way, he would have no choice but to play his hand. Gerald closed his eyes to hide his cold gaze. Oliver looked at Gerald's dark expression with a troubled face and bowed his head. He knew the reason for the Duke's anguish. To avoid revealing the identity of those in the Imperial Palace, they had avoided contact altogether for a long time. Making contact with them meant the real fight between the Emperor and the Duke was beginning.